Our reading today is from John chapter 13. In our text today, in week 4 of our sermon series, we hear Jesus' invitation to serve one another. John 13, 6 through 17. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord. You are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you should also do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the ones who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." May God bless the reading, hearing, and understanding of this word of God.
Basin of water and a towel. At the end of at the end of every mission trip that we have been able to partake in over the course of many years, at the end of every mission trip with our middle and high school students, we end with a foot washing that happens on Thursday night after a week of service. And as you guessed it, it's disgusting. And you've been a part of that. Sheila, you've been a part of that. Mike, you've been a part of that real recently. At the end of a week of service, the middle and high school students who go on mission trips, they get their feet washed, and usually by their chaperones. Their feet are washed. It's weird, and it's a really powerful moment. It's a really moving experience to be part of a foot washing ceremony. And at the end of each of the mission trips, we have opportunity to enact the words of Jesus. But not just the words of Jesus, the actions of Jesus. John chapter 13 begins, in John's Gospel, begins what's known as the farewell discourse in the Gospel of John. And for 3 or 4 chapters, Jesus is instructing his disciples. He's giving them kind of his last words, the words that he really wants them to remember. Because after the farewell discourse, already in the Gospel of John, although it's 21 chapters long, we move into the trial, to the betrayal, to the trial, to the crucifixion, to the death, but then to the rising and then to the ascension of Jesus. But in John chapter 13, Jesus is preparing kind of the last words that his disciples that he wants his disciples to know. And too often, I think, faith for us becomes like, Jesus sharing words with us. Like, we're trying to download as much information as we can. We're trying to remember, we put trivia up on the screens because it's kind of fun. We know some fun facts about the Bible, whatever it might be, right? But faith is more than just knowledge. And so Jesus takes time at the end of his life, at the end of his time with his disciples, to enact what he wants his disciples to remember. And so Jesus takes off his robe, ties a towel around his waist, and he goes around, I imagine, a circle and washes his disciples' feet. When we wash the kids' feet on mission trips, it's a dirty experience. And I don't know how else to say it. It's a dirty experience. But here's the reality. Most of them wear shoes all week long. Most of them wear shoes all week long. And most of them take showers just about every day on a mission trip. And most of them walk on pavement or grass. The disciples didn't. The disciples didn't shower every day. And in fact, the disciples didn't wear shoes. They wore sandals. And the disciples weren't walking on grass or pavement. They were walking on clay and dust and sand and dirt. And so I can't imagine what that bowl must have looked like. I can't imagine what that bowl must have looked like at the end of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. But Jesus takes on the form of, he plays the role of the very lowest of the lowest slave in the household, who was tasked with, it was the lowest of the lowest slaves' obligation to wash those who were coming into a home to wash their feet. That tells us something about what Jesus is hoping his disciples will do. And I think that tells us a little bit about what Jesus hopes you and I will be about. We've been, for 4 weeks now, thinking about living the life of Jesus and what it means to first simply be, to claim our identity as child of God, as forgiven child of God, and to be at rest in that, to find peace in that. And then last week we thought about forgiving. What does it mean to be a person who forgives recklessly? What does it mean to be a person who isn't quick to judge, but is a person who is quick to forgive? This week we're going to talk about serving, and then next week and the week after we're going to talk about giving, and then we're going to talk about going, because it's not just about being, it's about being sent out into the world. So today we're going to think about what it means to serve. Jesus gives us this really powerful example of what it means to serve. At the back of your bulletin, there's a place for you to follow along, and a place for you to use some fill-ins. There's some pens in the back. Carrie, would you mind if you need a pen? I'd love it. Just raise your hand. We'll get you a pen. We'd love for you to use the fill-ins and to follow along. But I want to just reflect with you quickly on what it means to respond to the invitation to serve. What does it look like to respond to the invitation to serve? Okay. Jesus says in John chapter 14, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. There's a difference between being nice and being compassionate and being helpful and serving in the name of Jesus. Service, as a follower of Jesus, means that we're following Jesus. We're not just being kind and nice. I love, some of you are members of 100 Men of Norwalk, right? It's a charitable organization that tries to help other organizations in the community, that makes a big impact in the community. I love some of you are members of Rotary Club. Some of you are members of, Kiwanis. Probably not a lot of you are members of the Lions Club, or the Knights of Columbus. That would be weird, I suppose. But what I'm trying to say is there's a difference between serving, being kind, being helpful. Those are good, and we should be that, right? We ought to be compassionate to our neighbors, but there's a difference between being nice and serving in the name of Jesus and following Jesus. Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Jesus' commandment is to love God and to love people. And so as people who want to serve, it starts with Jesus. And it ends with Jesus too. It begins and it ends with Jesus. It's about Jesus. It's about sharing the love of Jesus. You see what I'm saying? It's more than just being kind and compassionate and helpful. We ought to be those things. But we're representing Jesus in our service. How do we respond to the invitation to serve? First, we follow Jesus. Second, we humble ourselves. First, we follow Jesus, and second, say the next one. I forgot. Yeah, okay, we'll leave it there. I got it right there. My fault. We follow Jesus. It's about Jesus. Pew Research did this survey in 2017. They asked the question, what are the top reasons you as adults choose to attend or not to attend religious services? 81% of respondents said that they attend religious services to become closer to God. Worship ought to bring you closer to God. In our songs and in our prayers and in the words spoken, we ought to experience God. That ought to be the primary goal of worship, to bring us into the presence of God. It raises the question for me, though, what are the other 19% thinking? Like, why do I attend worship if it doesn't bring me closer to God? And I know that there are some of us who attend religious services out of obligation, like we have to be here. Some of you confirmation students, you have to be here, right? But often older on in life, we feel like we've got to be here, or something bad's going to happen. Or we attend religious services out of guilt, or shame, or to get something back from God, like we're bargaining with God. I'll attend church today if you'll fix my relationship, this or not, this or that, right? 81% of respondents say they choose to attend religious services to become closer to God. Why are you here today? I hope it is so that you can experience the presence of God. The service begins with the command to follow Jesus. We follow Jesus. What does it mean to respond to the invitation to serve? First, we follow. Now, second, same. Thank you. Second, we humble ourselves. We humble ourselves. In Mark chapter 9, whoever wants to be first must be last. Must be last of all and servant of all. I am a proud person. I'm really proud. I know that pride gets in my way. Over and over and over again, I stumble on the sin of pride because I'm proud of who I am and what I've done with my life and where I've come. And if you want me to talk about how proud I am of my kids, I'd go on and on. But service begins with humility. Putting ourselves, not just a little bit less, but in the commandment, in Jesus' words, last of all. Jesus was taking the form of the very lowest of the lowest servant. It wasn't the servant who had the most seniority who got to wash the guests' feet. It wasn't the servant who was the most favorite who got to wash the disciples' feet. It was the servant of lowest regard who had to wash the feet of those who entered into that household. And Jesus takes on that form, that role. He doesn't say to someone else, hey, you go and wash those disciples' feet. He goes and washes his disciples' feet. So what does it mean to respond to the invitation to serve? It means we follow, and it means that we humble ourselves. It also means that we open our circles. Service means that we open the circles that we live in. We expand those circles. Our eyes get bigger. I'll give an example. We put together these blessing bags that are available to you. We'd love it if you take them with you and maybe give them to somebody in need that you encounter this week. But Sandy Smith, last Sunday, she took a couple of them with her, and then early on this last week, she came back in and she said, "Can I take some more? Because I gave all of the blessing bags out." And then she came back a little bit later and she said, "Can I take some more? I know that I've already given out more than I was supposed to, but can I take some more? Because I keep finding people who are in need, and I keep wanting to give them this blessing bag." And then she came back again and she said, "Can I take some more?" Because you see, her eyes were suddenly opened to people that were in need, right? And so just simply having that tool in front of her allowed her to open her eyes, to get bigger, to notice the people that are in need, how easy it is for us, right? It's so easy for us, especially driving downtown. Somebody in need, and boy, can I avert my eyes like that, right? You're probably pretty good at it too. Right? But part of service means that our circles get a little bit bigger. We open our circles. What does it mean to respond to the invitation to serve? We follow Jesus. We humble ourselves. We open our circles. And we love. We love first. People who are quick to love. And love is a messy, messy thing. Love is messy. Because too often it gets abused. Too often it gets taken advantage of. But service begins with love. That's the next one. Sorry. We love, Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Let me tell you real quickly a situation that comes up with the emergency fund that the Ministerial Association collectively stewards. And all the churches in Norwalk participate in helping those in need in the community. And from time to time, we'll have a phone call that will come here, we'll come to Crossroads Church, or we'll come to Norwalk Christian Church, or we'll come to St. John's Catholic Church, and someone will be in need. And often those needs are absolutely legitimate. They are people who are down in their luck for whatever reason. They are in need and they don't know where else to turn, and so they call blindly a church to say, I'm going to get kicked out of my house. I can't pay my rent. The water is going to get shut off, whatever it might be. Which, by the way, can you imagine being in that kind of situation? And they call and they're in need. And here's the situation. Many times those needs are legitimate. And there are times when they are not. There are times when those needs are not legitimate. And I'll be honest with you to say that even though we try collectively to steward that emergency fund as best we can, there are times that the Ministerial Association, we get taken advantage of. Somebody just kind of knows the right words to say, they know the right things to do, and bleeding heart, whoever says, we'll help you, and we write a check, and then we find out that they have the resources. They were using us. There was a wise priest who served in Norwalk a couple years ago, Father John Ludwig, who said this. Because we were lamenting the fact that somebody had taken advantage of us. And he said this to us: I would rather help somebody who wasn't in need so that I could help somebody in need than not help anybody at all. I would rather help somebody who wasn't in need so that I could help somebody who was in need than not help anybody at all. And so part of service is loving and loving recklessly and giving generously, and sometimes that means, that you get taken advantage of, but I'd rather be taken advantage of every once in a while than not help anybody. Service is about loving first. So we love Jesus, we humble ourselves, we open our circles, we love first, and lastly, you ready? Yeah. Oh, next one. Oh. Lastly, we get a little bit dirty. Like every once in a while, the PowerPoint isn't quite right, and it's not right. That should say we get a little bit dirty. Because every once in a while, service is about getting a little bit dirty. Every once in a while, service is about getting our hands and our feet calloused. Every once in a while, service is about raking up the stuff that you don't want to rake up. Every once in a while, service is about cleaning up the stuff that you don't want to clean up. Every once in a while, service is about getting just a little bit dirty. there are many middle and high school students that were a part of this congregation or continue to be part of this congregation who've had their feet washed on a Thursday night on the mission trip, and they got dirty because they wanted to follow Jesus, and because they were willing to humble themselves, and because they were willing to go to places that they didn't know. They opened their circles. They were people who learned how to love first, and they were people, who got just a little bit dirty. In 2014, there were a group of 11 of us who went to the Wind River Reservation in Wyoming. Ann was a brave chaperone who went along on that trip. You didn't drive much, but you went along on that trip. I remember because that was a lot of driving. And then there were a group of 12 of us, and for whatever reason, Ann went along again, to Nashville, Tennessee in 2015. And then there were a group of 11 of us who went to Rutland, Vermont, and Spencer had an accident in the back of the van. He couldn't hold his cookies down. That was an exciting trip. And Miss Taylor went along as chaperone. She was incredible. And then there was a group of 9 of us. There were a group of 11 of us who went to Kansas City, Missouri in 2017. It was Ben's first mission trip. And Matt Hill and Eric Smith went along as chaperones on that trip. And then there was a group of 9 of us who went to Milwaukee, and Randy Porter went along as a chaperone on that trip. And then there was a group of 12 of us who went to Louisville, Kentucky, and Linda Clark and John Sperry went along on that trip as chaperones. And then there was a group of 7 of us who went to New Orleans, Louisiana in 2021, and Mike, for whatever reason, chose to go along on that trip, even though he didn't have any kids that were going on that trip. And then there was another group of 15 of us who went. Miss Taylor went along again, and Dan Geisler went along on that trip. Who had gone on a trip to Rutland? No, had gone on a trip to Wind River and to Nashville, and now he was a chaperone. And he got to do the feet washing, even though he had his feet washed 5-10 years ago. What does it mean to respond to the invitation to serve? It looks like Jesus not just downloading information for his disciples to learn, but Jesus kneeling before his disciples and washing their feet and saying to them, "Do you know what I hope you will be? Watch what I'm doing right now. Follow me," Jesus says. And he says, be a person who is ready to respond to the invitation to serve. And humble yourself and open up your circles and love first and get just a little bit there. Let's pray. Holy, good, and gracious God, we thank you for first serving us and for sacrificing your Son Jesus to live and to breathe and to teach and then to die for us. God, we thank you for enacting or for inviting us to be people who are ready to serve. Lord, guide us. Guide us and help us to follow you. All this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. I should stand.